You think you know yourself? You don't. Not until you face the parts you've spent a lifetime running from. Let's begin. The room around you feels heavier than usual, doesn't it? Maybe it's the stillness. Maybe it's because you're about to see something you've avoided for years. You're sitting there, scrolling, half expecting some motivational fluff to pump you up. This isn't that. This is a scalpel. Slow, precise, and yes, a little cruel. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe. But only if you really want to know the darkest part. You're not one person. You're a collection of masks. Every morning you pick one. The responsible one. The fun one. The unbothered one. They fit snugly, don't they? Almost like skin. But they're not. They're costumes stitched together by fear. Fear of rejection, fear of failure, fear of being seen naked in the emotional sense. You've worn them so long you can't remember where the mask ends and you begin. This isn't new. Ancient Rome had its persona, literally a mask worn in theatre, later meaning the social role. That's where we get the word person. Historians still argue whether we've evolved beyond this or just perfected the disguise. Nietzsche certainly didn't think we had. He accused humanity of living behind 1,000 veils, terrified of their true face. Picture yourself at a party. You laugh when you're supposed to. You nod when someone shares their vacation story. You don't care, but nodding is safe. Underneath, you're screaming, or maybe just whispering to be real. But real feels dangerous. After all, crocodile dung used to be used as sunscreen in ancient Egypt. Humans have always been weirdly dedicated to covering up what's natural. And here's the rot. Masks protect you, until they consume you. One day, you wake up and can't recall what you wanted before you started performing. You're the perfect employee, partner, friend, yet hollow. This is how most people lose their purpose. Not in one dramatic moment, but drip by drip, sacrifice by sacrifice, until there's nothing left but the role. You sense this sometimes, don't you? That quiet panic in the grocery aisle. That, why am I even here, at 2 a.m., but you push it away. Tomorrow, you'll put the mask on again. You didn't choose most of what you chase. Let that sink in for a second. The job title you're grinding for, the house you think will finally make you happy, the ideal body, the polite personality, all planted in you long before you knew what wanting was. Picture yourself as a newborn, a blank slate. Within hours, voices start filling you. Good boy, smart girl, don't cry, do this. Your parents hand you their unfulfilled ambitions like heirlooms. Society layers on its script. Go to school, get the degree, climb the ladder, die comfortably. You nod along because what else is there? By the time you're old enough to question it, the programming feels like you. Nietzsche loathed this. He saw most people as sleepwalkers, living not for themselves but for the herd's stale dreams. He called it slave morality, values created to keep you obedient. And it's sneaky. You think you're free because you picked your career. But did you? Or was it chosen by the invisible hand of expectation? Historians still argue whether modern capitalism liberated us or simply gave us shinier chains. Take the 1950s American dream, suburbia, 2 kids, white picket fence. Millions pursued it like salvation, never realizing it was a marketing campaign to boost post-war consumption. Today, it's Instagram lifestyles, curated vacations, 6-figure side hustles, the task boss babe myth. Different wallpaper, same prison, and you're in it. Even your rebellions, your tattoos, your unique playlist are pre-approved niches sold to you. Ever wonder why your dreams feel oddly exhausting? Because they're not yours. They're someone else's ghosts rattling inside you. And when you live for ghosts, purpose is impossible. Purpose demands authenticity, and authenticity can't breathe in a borrowed life. Here's the quirky part. In 18th century France, powdered wigs were a status symbol. But some were so tall they needed tiny cages to keep birds out. Imagine that. People carrying birdcage heads just to fit in. Are you really so different, lugging around inherited ambitions that peck at your soul? Somewhere in you a faint rebellion stirs, but it's weak. Tomorrow you'll post that hustle quote again and call it freedom. Safety feels good, doesn't it? That steady paycheck, the predictable routine, the couch that knows the exact shape of your body. You tell yourself you've made it, that stability is success. But secretly you feel dull, like carbon left too long in the dark, never pressured into a diamond. Comfort isn't harmless. It's a cage, padded, yes, but a cage nonetheless. You don't feel the bars because they're lined with Netflix, food delivery, and tiny dopamine hits from your phone. This is how most people die before they die, numbed by convenience. Nietzsche mocked this. He warned of the last man, a future human who avoids all risk, all greatness, content with a little pleasure and no pain. We have invented happiness, they'll say, blinking at each other, never daring to leap. Historians still argue whether we're already there. Look around, risk aversion disguised as self-care, ambition replaced by comfort slogans like, "You deserve to rest," all day, every day. Here's the trap. Comfort doesn't just make you soft, it erases your edge. A life without friction breeds purposelessness because purpose is forged in resistance. Think of muscles. They only grow by tearing slightly and healing stronger. Without struggle, you stay limp, physically, mentally, spiritually. Quirky tidbit. In 14th century England, they believed warm baths weakened the body, so warriors bathed rarely, preferring hardened filth to stay strong. Extreme, sure, but at least they knew softness carried a cost. You, meanwhile, chase comfort like it's holy, then wonder why you feel empty. When was the last time you scared yourself on purpose? Took a risk big enough to make your stomach churn? You can't recall, can you? Purpose hides in those places, in the discomfort, the unknown. Yet every day you choose the warm bed over the cold dawn of becoming. Tomorrow you'll wake up in that same safe room, and you'll call it living. There's a part of you you've never met. You sense it sometimes, like a shadow moving just out of sight. You distract yourself quickly when it surfaces because looking at it feels dangerous. It's the abyss Nietzsche spoke of. If you gaze long into an abyss, the abyss also gazes into you. He wasn't talking about cliffs or darkness in caves. He meant the depths of your own psyche. Imagine sitting in silence. No phone, no music, no noise. Just you. Within minutes, unease creeps in. Thoughts you've buried start whispering, the resentment towards someone you pretend to love, the ambition you've muted because it scares others, the fact that you might not believe in the life you're living. This is why you avoid silence. It strips away distractions and introduces you to yourself. Fear of this depth is ancient. The Greeks told of Narcissus, who saw his reflection and drowned in it, warning that self-confrontation can consume you. Historians still argue whether myths like this discouraged introspection intentionally to keep people compliant. Nietzsche believed so. He thought society keeps you shallow because depth births danger, radical thought, rebellion, transformation. And yet avoiding it costs more than facing it. When you don't explore your depths, they leak. Ever had a sudden outburst over something trivial? That's buried rage escaping, or felt inexplicable emptiness despite having everything. That's your unlived life knocking. Here's a bizarre fact. In the 19th century, Victorians covered mirrors when someone died, fearing the soul might get trapped inside. You do the same metaphorically, covering inner mirrors to avoid seeing what's dead in you. But the dead doesn't disappear. It festers. Purpose demands diving into the abyss, seeing what's down there, and surviving it. But tonight, you'll scroll past that feeling again, letting the depths wait another day. You like to think you're independent, don't you? That your choices are yours alone, but look closer. Notice how you laugh a little louder when the group laughs, how your opinions shift when everyone disagrees, how you post what's acceptable, never what's raw. This isn't freedom, it's the herd's grip on your throat. Humans are wired to belong. It kept us alive when saber-toothed tigers lurked. Exile meant death. Today, rejection won't kill you, but your brain doesn't know that. It still floods you with panic at the thought of standing apart. So you conform, subtly, constantly, shaping yourself to fit. Nietzsche despised this instinct. He saw it as humanity's greatest weakness, the surrender of individuality to the herd. He mocked our obsession with approval, calling it the morality of the crowd, a morality designed to tame lions into sheep. Historians still argue whether civilization could even exist without this conformity. Maybe they're right, but what's civilization worth if it costs you your soul? Consider Galileo. He dared to say the Earth moves around the sun when everyone knew it didn't. For this, he was tried by the Inquisition, forced to recant. Legend says he muttered, and yet it moves under his breath. Imagine that courage, standing against the entire world with nothing but truth. Do you have even a fraction of that spine? Or do you swallow your truth daily, smiling as you choke? Odd tidbit. In medieval times, some towns punished nonconformists by making them wear donkey ears in public. Today, we've upgraded to subtler tools: social shaming, cancel culture, silent exclusion. But the effect's the same. Step out of line, pay the price. Purpose can't survive in the herd. It requires stepping outside where it's cold, lonely, and real. But tomorrow, you'll laugh with the group again, blending in perfectly, wondering why you feel invisible. Noise has become your oxygen. You wake up to notifications, work to background chatter, fall asleep to streaming voices. Silence feels unnatural now, like something's wrong if nothing's buzzing. But this constant noise isn't neutral. It's a weapon. It keeps you from asking the only question that matters: why are you here? Think about it. When was the last time you sat still for 10 minutes? No distraction, just breathing. You can't. Within seconds, your fingers twitch for the phone. The noise isn't just around you, it's in you, and it's killing your purpose by drowning out the whispers of your own mind. Nietzsche never faced TikTok or 24-hour news cycles, but he warned of the age of distraction, where people fill their lives with trivialities to avoid meaning. Historians still argue whether technology liberated us or enslaved us to endless stimulation. The truth? Probably both. But look at yourself, enslaved. Consider ancient Rome's bread and circuses, lavish games to keep citizens docile while the empire rotted. Your circuses are digital now. You binge, scroll, like, consume content crafted to hijack your attention, leaving no space for self-reflection. And you think you're choosing it. Here's a quirky gem. In the 1920s, a US town installed a silence zone downtown where honking and loud noises were banned to reduce stress. Imagine that today, a quiet zone in your life. Impossible, isn't it? You'd panic, because in quiet, your suppressed doubts would surface. Do I actually want this life? Am I wasting it? Purpose doesn't scream, it whispers, and whispers can't compete with your constant feed. Until you cut the noise, you'll stay lost, comfortably entertained, dying slowly with a smile emoji. Tomorrow morning, you'll reach for that phone again before you even reach for yourself. You've probably been told to follow your passion. It sounds inspiring, doesn't it? But it's a trap, the glitter-coated lie that keeps most people busy while their purpose sneaks out the back door. Passion feels warm, safe, and flattering, but it isn't enough. Chasing it can actually bury you in mediocrity. Think about it. How many times have you quit something because it got hard, uncomfortable, or didn't give instant validation? That's exactly why passion alone fails. It's seductive at the start, but it doesn't push you when the world pushes back. Purpose requires endurance. Passion is impatient. Nietzsche knew this. He warned against idolizing the feeling of doing what you love over the discipline of becoming who you are. Historians still argue whether his own passions saved or doomed him, but he certainly lived the tension. Consider Leonardo da Vinci. People idolize him as a genius, fueled by curiosity and inspiration. But behind the Renaissance legend was relentless, grueling work, dissecting corpses, learning anatomy, failing repeatedly. His passion wasn't enough. It was matched by obsession and discipline. You, meanwhile, scroll for motivation memes, expecting them to ignite action. Here's a quirky tidbit. In 18th century England, hobbyists pursued fireworks experiments in their backyards, often blowing up sheds and startling neighbors. Dangerous? Absolutely. But failure was part of the fun and the learning. You avoid the messy part because you want a perfect, Instagram-ready passion. Purpose doesn't hand you pleasure first. It asks for sweat, risk, and boredom. Chasing only what excites you keeps you moving in circles, performing, consuming, pretending. That feeling of emptiness after chasing another dream job or side hustle isn't existential. It's natural. It's your life telling you, stop following sparks, start forging fire. And yet you probably won't. Tomorrow you'll open that same YouTube tab, seeking the next passion tip, blissfully unaware that purpose doesn't come from clicking. It comes from creating, suffering, and enduring. Pain has a voice, but you've been trained to mute it. Every discomfort, every setback, every awkward conversation you dodge, it's trying to tell you something essential. You recoil because suffering is unpleasant, and you're allergic to unpleasantness. Yet Nietzsche insisted that suffering is not the enemy. It's the compass. Think about it. When have you felt alive? Not when scrolling, not when binging another series, but when your heart raced, when the world pressed on your limits, when loss or failure shook you to the core. That's the signal. Pain is the blunt instrument pointing toward what matters, the raw feedback you've been ignoring. Historians still argue whether stoicism or hedonism truly equips humanity for growth, but Nietzsche didn't hesitate. Avoid suffering, and you avoid life. Consider the Stoic philosophers like Marcus Aurelius, emperor and meditator. He had power, wealth, and influence, yet he wrote of his own anxieties and losses in journals no one would see. He saw pain as instruction, as a guide to purpose, not as something to numb or bypass. Contrast that with modern addiction to comfort, caffeine, screens, entertainment, superficial love. You're numbing yourself to the one thing that could guide you forward. Here's a fringe detail. Some tribes in Papua New Guinea believe that intentionally enduring pain, like cutaneous scars during rituals, connects you to ancestral purpose. They literally mark suffering onto their bodies to find meaning. You swipe left on metaphors, forgetting that your invisible scars, the disappointments, betrayals, failures, carry similar wisdom, and yet you shrink from it. You cry in secret, ignore the pangs in your gut, skip uncomfortable conversations. Pain knocks at your door, but you keep it on the porch. Purpose, however, waits inside. It demands you let pain in, stare it down, and listen carefully. Only then does the compass start pointing. Tomorrow you'll avoid that discomfort again, binging dopamine, because pain feels like a stranger, and strangers are scary. You've been trained to wait for life to hand you purpose, as if it's some magical prize. Nietzsche would snort at that. Purpose isn't found like a wallet under the couch cushions. It's seized. It's a conquest, a hammer-forged creation from the raw materials of struggle. Look at it this way. Every time you face resistance, you have a choice. Shrink, complain, and retreat, or rise, confront, and shape what you want into being. This is the will to power, Nietzsche's concept that drives life itself. Not dominance over others, though that's tempting, but mastery over yourself and your circumstances. Historians still argue whether his will is psychological or metaphysical, but the point remains. Purpose emerges when you assert your life instead of waiting for it. Imagine a blacksmith. He doesn't wait for a sword to appear fully formed. He hammers, bends, heats, cools, repeats, and in the end, he holds something stronger than raw metal. Your purpose is that sword. Each challenge, each discomfort, each doubt is a strike against the cold iron of your soul. Here's a quirky tidbit. In medieval Europe, apprentice blacksmiths had to sleep near the forge overnight to truly understand the metal's temperament. Sounds extreme, right? But intimacy with struggle, the literal and metaphorical fire, creates mastery. You, meanwhile, hop from hobby to hobby, job to job, swiping and scrolling, hoping for sparks without heat. Most people never find purpose because they wait, hesitant to seize life's hammer. They avoid pain, dodge challenges, and worship safety. And yet, right in the middle of struggle, opportunity waits, screaming to be grasped. The first strike is always scary, but once you swing, something awakens, an unmistakable clarity that only effort and confrontation can produce. Tomorrow, you might still hesitate, but one day the hammer will feel natural in your hands. And only then does purpose begin to take shape. Before you can truly become, something must die, not physically. Your career, your relationships, your morning coffee habit, though maybe that too, but the you that's been comfortable, performative, safe. Nietzsche called it the destruction of the old self, a necessary chaos before creation. You resist this, of course. Chaos terrifies you. It's loud, unpredictable, and smells like failure. Think about it. Every habit, every comfort zone, every relationship that feels easy is a layer shielding you from reality. They serve a purpose, survival. But survival is not purpose, and you can't sculpt life from half measures. Historians still argue whether Nietzsche's radical destruction applies to everyone or only the higher man. But the metaphor resonates. You can't step forward without letting go. Consider the Renaissance artists who burned early sketches, frustrated by imperfection. They destroyed their attempts to make space for their true masterpieces. You, however, cling to old sketches of yourself, safe jobs, passive friendships, curated identities, never daring to incinerate what no longer serves you. Here's an odd tidbit. In some Polynesian cultures, canoe builders intentionally break tools to force innovation in design. Without destruction, they claim, creativity stagnates. Your metaphorical tools, beliefs, roles, routines, are rusted and ready for similar demolition. Destruction isn't easy. It's lonely, disorienting, and smells of smoke and uncertainty. But within that fire lies the raw material for rebirth. You cannot build a tower with rotten timber. Only by tearing down what is weak or false in you can you construct something enduring, something real. Tomorrow you'll hesitate to burn another bridge, quit another habit, face another fear. But each small destruction is a chisel, shaping the person who will finally unmistakably own their life. Loneliness isn't optional when you seek purpose. It's the tax you pay. You think you're avoiding it by staying busy, liking posts, keeping small talk alive, but the truth is that genuine transformation isolates you first. Purpose doesn't grow in the crowd. It sprouts in solitude, in the silent corners of your mind where no one else can peek. Imagine a lighthouse. Alone on a rocky shore, it beams relentlessly, guiding ships safely. If it tried to join a flock of houses, its light would scatter, its clarity diluted. You are that lighthouse, though you dread standing solitary, fearing judgment, fearing emptiness. Nietzsche saw this clearly. True creation, true greatness, requires standing apart. Historians still argue whether the solitary life Nietzsche advocated is feasible for most humans, but its necessity for inner clarity is undeniable. Consider Emily Dickinson, a poet who lived in near isolation, rarely leaving her home. She wrote hundreds of poems in quiet solitude, untouched by social expectation. Today, her isolation is celebrated as genius, though during her lifetime it was viewed as eccentric. You, of course, resist solitude because your inner critic is loud, persistent, and judgmental. But that critic often shields the seeds of your most authentic self. Here's a quirky fact. Japanese monks in the Edo period would spend years meditating alone in small caves, sometimes surviving only on rainwater. That extreme solitude shaped their spiritual clarity and purpose. You won't go that far, probably, but the principle applies. Isolation is uncomfortable because it forces you to confront your true voice, the one drowned out by the herd. And yet loneliness is temporary, a prelude to connection on a deeper level. When you face it, you realize that most relationships were distractions anyway, shallow comforts delaying the awakening of your real self. The tax hurts, but it's the cost of meaningful life. Tomorrow you'll still avoid it, choosing noise over reflection, friends over clarity. But the longer you wait, the heavier the loneliness will feel when purpose finally knocks. Death is the quietest teacher, but you act like it doesn't exist. You scroll as if immortality were guaranteed, as if tomorrow were a right and not a gift. Yet Nietzsche constantly reminded us, to confront mortality is to sharpen life itself. When you truly see death, the trivialities that dominate your days shrink into dust. Imagine standing at a cliff's edge, wind biting, waves roaring far below. The sheer scale of the world presses on you. That vertigo is a small taste of mortality, the reminder that life is limited and fleeting. Most people avoid it. Hospitals, memorials, and obituaries are conveniently abstract. Historians still argue whether the European memento mori culture, those skulls in paintings, was morbid or practical. Regardless, the reminder was meant to jolt them awake. You ignore it. Think of Steve Jobs, who credited his clarity in decision-making to awareness of his mortality. When death is real in your mind, mediocrity loses its grip, fear of failure loosens, and purpose becomes urgent. You don't need a terminal diagnosis. You need imagination sharpened by truth. Here's a quirky fact. Some Victorian-era cemeteries had death clocks that counted down the years remaining until expected mortality based on age and health. Morbid, yes. Effective. Perhaps it made each moment heavier, more precious. You carry a mental death clock now too. You just cover it with apps, binging, and distraction, pretending it isn't ticking. Facing death is not morbid, it's clarifying. Purpose hides behind that awareness. Once you embrace it, suddenly the meaningless arguments, the endless scrolling, the petty fears, everything fades. Life gains gravity. Your desires gain precision, and you realize some risks are worth taking because they are all you really have. Tomorrow, you'll forget for a moment, lose yourself in comfort again, but the whisper of mortality waits, nudging you back toward the urgent path you've been evading. Saying yes to yourself is dangerous, terrifying even, because it dismantles the safety net you've spent a lifetime building. That yes can ruin relationships, topple routines, challenge authority, and burn bridges, but it also ignites the self you've been hiding. Nietzsche understood this. Every affirmative step toward your own becoming is a rebellion against the comfortable, the familiar, the expected. Picture it. You wake up one day and decide, unapologetically, to live by your own rules. Maybe you quit a job that no longer fits, end a relationship that feels like chains, or move across the country for a dream nobody else can see. That yes is electric. It burns, vibrates, and shakes the world around you. Historians still argue whether Nietzsche's philosophy encouraged destruction or creation first, but the tension is clear. To fully embrace yourself, something must break. Consider Van Gogh. He said yes to his art despite rejection, poverty, and loneliness. That yes led to brilliance but also anguish. He chose his vision over acceptance, and the world is richer for it. You, however, hesitate. You weigh comfort over courage, conformity over clarity, always muttering, maybe tomorrow. Quirky tidbit. In medieval Europe, monks took a vow of radical yes, complete obedience to their calling, even if it meant walking barefoot in winter or fasting for days. Insane? Perhaps. Effective? Undeniably. Their yes was total, uncompromising, and terrifying to anyone valuing safety. Your yes is the spark that demolishes old worlds, the you who obeys others, fears failure, and hides under layers of distraction. It's volatile, uncomfortable, and isolating. But without it, purpose is impossible. Every no to your own truth is another day spent wandering in someone else's map, lost, confused, and unfulfilled. Tomorrow, you'll probably say no again, hesitate, weigh comfort over courage. But one day, when the fear finally collapses, your yes will roar, and nothing will ever be the same. Living as a creator isn't a metaphor, it's a full-time rebellion. You are the artist of your own existence, whether you accept it or not. Every choice, every habit, every decision carves the sculpture of your life. But most people refuse the chisel, preferring to be clay in someone else's hands. Think about it. You brush your teeth, choose breakfast, send emails, scroll feeds, all tiny acts of creation or repetition. If repeated unconsciously, life becomes a series of autopilot gestures. But if approached with awareness, every gesture shapes meaning, purpose, and identity. Nietzsche called this self-overcoming, not avoiding life's challenges, but mastering them, transforming yourself in the process. Historians still argue whether this was intended literally or metaphorically, but the principle is clear. To live deliberately is to live dangerously, beautifully, and fully. Consider Beethoven. Deaf for years, he didn't stop composing. He created worlds from silence. You, meanwhile, are surrounded by noise but rarely produce, rarely risk, rarely mold the raw materials of your own life into anything lasting. Creation demands solitude, struggle, and patience, luxuries you rarely grant yourself. Here's a quirky tidbit. In the Middle Ages, artisans would deliberately ruin a piece of pottery just to see if they could make it stronger or more unique. You shy from imperfection, terrified of failure, but every mistake is a teacher in disguise. Purpose thrives on the messy, the imperfect, the risk-filled act of making something real. Living as a creator requires daily courage. It asks that you see the raw materials of your life, your emotions, your time, your relationships, and decide deliberately what to shape and what to discard. Most people never do this. They follow instructions, habits, and trends, wondering why life feels hollow. You have the tools, you have the fire. The only question is, will you strike the chisel or let another day slip by in autopilot? Tomorrow, you'll face the choice again, creation or complacency. At last, the storm settles. The lightning of fear, doubt, and distraction fades into a quiet drizzle. You trudge through the remnants of old masks, inherited dreams, and comfort zones, and notice something subtle, almost imperceptible, a soft, unspoken knowing. Purpose isn't a shout, it's a whisper, arriving after the noise, after the destruction, after the lonely vigils and the confrontation with mortality. You remember the abyss you avoided, the pain you muted, the no's you swallowed. All of it, the discomfort, the rebellion, the lonely hours, wasn't wasted. It was preparatory, like a musician tuning their instrument before the first note. You didn't notice it, but each small act of courage, each embrace of discomfort, each step into solitude, was slowly chiseling a path toward this quiet arrival. Historians still argue whether such clarity is a natural gift or earned only through relentless struggle. But Nietzsche would remind you it demands both. Here's a quirky tidbit. In 17th century Japan, samurai would meditate in freezing rivers at dawn to attain clarity. Harsh? Absolutely. But the principle remains. The journey toward purpose is never cushioned. You, in your modern life, have faced symbolic rivers, anxiety, boredom, disappointment, fear, isolation. You've stepped in unwillingly, stumbling, but you've arrived nonetheless. You may notice it most in mundane moments, sipping tea, watching clouds, walking through a quiet street at dusk. That inner whisper, the compass that survived your noise, your herd, your distractions, is now audible. It doesn't demand dramatic action or social media announcements. It asks only that you recognize its presence and follow it gently. And now, after years of avoiding, hiding, and performing, the knowing settles like dust on old furniture. The storms of struggle, the fires of destruction, the loneliness, they have done their work. Purpose doesn't scream, it hums. And if you're still breathing, still listening, still daring to face yourself tomorrow, it will guide you quietly but irrevocably toward the life you were meant to forge. The storm has passed. You feel it, don't you? That subtle easing, the quiet that follows the chaos of self-confrontation. It isn't loud or dramatic. It doesn't announce itself with fireworks or triumphant music. It whispers, a soft, steady hum beneath the noise you've spent a lifetime carrying. Every mask you shed, every fear you faced, every lonely hour endured, these have brought you here. Breathe. Feel the weight of it all lift. Just a little. The inherited dreams, the herd's expectations, the endless scrolling and distractions, they matter less now, or at least they no longer dictate your movements. You can see your own steps clearly, one at a time, gentle, deliberate, unhurried. Even the abyss you once avoided seems less terrifying. It has become a mirror, reflecting a self that is quietly whole, quietly powerful. You will still stumble. Tomorrow will bring old habits, old doubts, and new challenges. That's inevitable. But now you carry the awareness that they are just parts of the path, not the path itself. Your compass, the whisper of your true purpose, remains steady, waiting for your conscious attention. Imagine walking slowly at dusk, The light fading, the air soft, everything around you hushed. That is where purpose lives. In calm moments, in subtle choices, in gentle persistence. You don't need to rush or force it. You only need to keep showing up, keep listening, keep daring to say yes to yourself in small ways every day. So exhale, let your shoulders drop, and feel the quiet certainty. Purpose is not a destination. It is the slow unfolding of who you already are, patiently waiting for recognition. And now, you are ready to meet it.